nonetheless, like I said, I was depressed. I don't know how many times to say it, but I was depressed. And they just did not support me. There was no empathy. There was no sympathy. It was just like, fuck you, bitch. Like, why aren't you here for us? What about us? What about me? Not you. Like, no one ever asked me what was wrong with me. But here I am in the midst of my depression, asking you guys, how can I be a better friend? Here I am asking you guys how your day's going. Here I am sending you guys motivational quotes in the same way that I did from the beginning. No. And that's what, all of that calamity just made me, assess, this shit is, not for me. This shit is not for me. I would never do that. Alright, guys, so welcome to my channel. This is part 3, the final part to an initial story time that I was doing pertaining to a former friendship of mine. Part 1 was me detailing the attractions and or attachments that were consistent within this relationship, as well as detailing an aspect of parentification that furthermore resulted in a karmic relationship. And then part 2 was me detailing the characters. So pretty much it was a character analysis. But nonetheless, within part 3, I'm going to be sharing the specific inconveniences, the minor aspects of our relationship that led to this major climactic blowout. You know what I mean? Because the relationship is former, so it no longer exists as it once did. So this is just me detailing, from my perspective, things that happened that made me step away from the relationship as much as I was being, exiled. And prior to proceeding, I want to share with you all something of a significant value. It is of myself. And getting to the point, I'm a military child. So from infancy to the age of 5, I moved back and forth from my hometown of South Carolina to Virginia Beach. So I was going back and forth from Virginia Beach, Virginia to South Carolina. Then from the age of 6 to, we're not even going to get into ages, but when I was in 2nd grade, that's when I moved to Jacksonville, Florida. Then from 2nd grade to 6th grade, I remained in Jacksonville, Florida, because we established a permanent residency there. We, purchased our second home and, settled within Jacksonville, Florida. So Jacksonville was like home. Jacksonville is my home. But 2nd grade to 6th grade, Jacksonville, Florida. Then 7th grade, I moved to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Then in 8th grade, I moved to Virginia Beach, Virginia. Then 9th grade, I moved back to Jacksonville, Florida, and remained for all of my high school years. So from 9th grade to 12th grade, I was vibing in Jacksonville. But for the most part, within my adolescence, within my teenage years, and even within a portion of my young adult years, I was just moving around. I never really developed permanency within my life. Although there was a sense of stability, I really didn't have that social connectivity per se. I knew how to acquire relationships. I knew how to sustain relationships because honestly, moving around, it gave me the opportunity to just experience the vastness of this world. It gave me the opportunity to experience different environments, as well as I was able to observe the inhabitants of this environment and kind of pick up on aspects of, whatever I was encountering. So it was kind of feeding my Libra aspect, because I have a way of mirroring people and just connecting with, humanity. It just fed my sociable nature as a Libra, as it too fed my mutable nature as a Sagittarius placement. So I loved moving around. It was a rush. I loved meeting new people. I loved being a new kid. I loved it. I really did. But nonetheless, like I was trying to convey earlier, I just did not know how to maintain the strength of a relationship. I knew how to build a good relationship. I knew how to connect with people that were like-minded, but as far as maintaining that connectivity due to the lack of proximity, there was always a dissonance within a lot of my friendships. For example, I have a homegirl by the name of Heba. I'm pretty sure if I call her, text her, or say anything to her, she's never gonna look at it and be like, what the fuck, who's this bitch? What? Why is she even calling me? She's gonna be like, hey Lamaya, it's still gonna be that same type of vibe, but there hasn't been a lot of maintenance within that relationship to where it could equate to what I experienced with my current group of friends, as we are of close proximity, if that makes sense. But if I called her, I knew she would, pick up for me. If she calls me, I'll pick up for her. But the maintenance to you know, it's just hard. It wasn't something that I was used to. It's not something that I really gave to a lot of my relationships, because it was like I knew I was going to leave. I knew that a lot of what I was experiencing wasn't permanent. So when I finally settled in Jacksonville, Florida, it was like, okay, now we got to develop a sense of permanency. It wasn't even something that I thought of too consciously, but it was just something that, like, okay, a lot of these relationships are now going to be as permanent as they are meant to be. So I share this to say I really didn't know how to nurture a relationship. It's almost the equivalency to being introduced into a romantic and or intimate situation. Like, you never had a boyfriend before, or you never had sex before, you never, you know, kissed someone before. You're not going to know how to do it. You may have an idea of how to do it. You may have had a little bit of experiences or close encounters, but you don't really know. And that's kind of how I try to explain it to my former group of friends. Like, I really don't know how to be a friend, because, well, not I don't know how to be a friend, but I don't know how to really nurture relationships in the way that you might. Because moreover, I was always a latchkey kid. When you're a military child too, I do find, at least for myself, you grow closer to your siblings if you have any. And especially given the dissonance within age from my brother and myself, like he's 5 to 6 years behind me. It's like I always just had time by myself. I appreciated my independence. Like, I was always valuing the reclusive aspect of life. You know what I mean? Like, I just always was by myself. And I noticed within this relationship, there were people that were dependent on me. You know what I mean? More than I was dependent on them, there were people that depended on me. And I didn't really identify that until I took notice to it. So I say all of this to say, like, long story short, I share with my friends, like, I never really have been in a long-term relationship, so you're gonna have to bear with me. Like, I'm learning with you. I'm learning through you. I'm learning by you. Like, I'm learning, but I'm willing to learn. It's so long as you know, can teach me. So that is what I wanted to share. I do apologize if it was long-winded and all over the place, but this is informal. I'm not really good at this, I don't think. So I share my independence as well as my military lifestyle, because it will further aid in your understanding of the initial transgression. And what I perceived to be the initial transgression was the April Fool's prank. And I did a story time detailing this experience in specifics, but just to briefly detail it, essentially, as I mentioned within one of the parts of this story time, I was a part of a cross-gender relationship. So this is a relationship that is consistent of men and women. I wasn't friends with the men, but I was mutually associated to them. So my friends, Leo and Scorpio, decided to plan this prank with one of the men in this cross-gender relationship, and just have him pretend as if he was interested in me, pretend as if he, you know, fancied me. And I really took offense to this because, one, I'm very private about intimate topics. You will never hear about me intimately, romantically. You will never really know who my partner is, not because I'm ashamed, just because I'm private. Like, I'm a really private person. And it's not even just on the level of social media, it's even within my personal life. Like, I just have my own boundaries, and my boundaries were not respected with this prank, because it's just like how invasive it was. You don't do that. You don't do that. That's something you don't prank people on. You don't. No, that's not how I get down. Like, no, I would never do that to you. But nonetheless, it really bothered me because it was so invasive. Like, why would you invade my privacy like that? And the thing that tripped me out the most is the fact that, I'm sorry, I was looking at the crack of my phone. But the thing that tripped me out the most was the fact that you had Playboy do this prank April 1st, but you didn't tell me that it was a prank until like 7 to 5 days later. So basically a week went by before you said, hey, this is a prank. Like, you really let this carry on so you could see like what I was going to do and what was going to happen, as opposed to just simply like doing a prank. Like, honestly, if they told me it was a prank April 1st, I probably would have been like, okay, straight, it's whatever, you know. I lack a level of transparency. I'm very like, you know, like this all the time when I'm with them, so they want to see me like this. So it's like, okay, cool, whatever. But the fact that you let it go on for days, it was like, that's some shiesty ass shit. I don't give a fuck. I would never do that. Excuse my language, but that really pissed me off. So that was the first transgression, when they pulled the April Fool's prank and had this young man act as if he likes me. Because on a more internal note, and being very honest with myself and transparent with my audience, I was lonely. I was lonely. If you are a woman and if you are a man, you may share this, I don't know, you may share similar sentiments as myself, because when you're around friends, when you're around peers that are all in relationships, and like you're the only one that has never been in a relationship and you're still not in a relationship, although you have men that compliment you, although you have talked to men before, you've just never been in a relationship, you're kind of like, dang, like, I'm not just alone with myself. I feel lonely at this point. So I was willing to accept that person's attention because, you know, he was giving me a level of affection. And at that time, I was very vulnerable. I was, you know, to a degree, you know, a bit weak. So it's kind of like, dang, like, you just don't do stuff to people like that. Although I didn't like him personally, like I was not physically attracted to him, sexually attracted to him. It was just something to keep myself entertained with. It was just something to just like have because it was there, you know what I mean? So nonetheless, that was like the first indiscretion, the April Fool's prank. That was just like, wait, bitch, the fuck is wrong with you? And now another experience that happened within this relationship, and I just want to briefly like disclaim, because some of this is like so self-deprecating, some of this is so embarrassing, but I share this because there truly is a value to every experience that I experience. I don't just share it because I want like, ooh, shock value, like this shit is crazy. Like, no, like I learned so much of myself. I learned so much about people, and I learned what to do and what not to do from, you know, these experiences. And that's why I share it with you all. So nonetheless, you know, during this time in my life, I was very nice. And oftentimes for me too, like when I love. So if I love you, I respect you, I value you. So 9 times out of 10, I'm going to be more forgiving than I would be with the average person. And I was very forgiving within this relationship. More than forgiving, I was nice. And to be nice isn't always to be good. And that is something that I had to learn to distinguish within this relationship. So getting to the point, they wanted to do They wanted to do this pool party. Leo, Scorpio wanted to do this pool party with the men in our cross-gender relationship. I did not really mess with the men in this relationship because they just had this off-brand flamboyancy. They were very childish, very juvenile. Like they just were not the type of men that I like to hang around. So, you know, I didn't really want to go. I didn't want to do that. And moreover, I didn't want to go to the pool because at that time I did not feel confident enough to present my body in a way that, you know, you often would when you're going to the pool or the beach. I didn't feel like being scandalously clad, wearing a bikini or even a one piece. So I was just like, I don't want to do that. Maybe we can do something different. And from that suggestion, that created a bit of conflict within our group chat prior to the event actually happening, because nonetheless, we did end up going to the little pool party shindig. I wasn't dressed in pool attire, but I definitely wanted to attend just to be there of, you know, physical support and to be a part of the social engagement. They wanted to have fun, and whether I was in the pool or not, you know, I wanted to be there and support that. So I was there, and I was wearing this light wash pair of jeans, a white V-neck shirt with white slides. Like I was literally wearing light white clothing. And my friends were in the pool, and I was just sitting there soaking up the sun, you know, letting my melanin be enriched, you know what I'm saying? And I'm just chilling. Like I'm literally chilling, listening to my music, vibing. And then they get out the pool eventually. And I just wanted to be funny. Like I'm the funny friend in the group. And even though this could be taken in a way that is like less than what it was meant to be or more than what it was meant to be, honestly, I was doing this purely for the sake of fun and because I knew that my friend had on a bikini. So of course, when you're at the pool or you're at the beach, there are going to be ice coolers with drinks, you know, food, etc., etc. So they had these Minute Maid fruit punches. So I had one, and I didn't even open it to drink it. I just had it there. So then when she got out the pool and she was still dripping wet, I just squirted it on her because she was in a bikini. She was already wet. I mean, like, it wasn't like she was wearing clothing. It wasn't like I was doing this and she couldn't immediately, you know, fix this. She decides that she wants to get the bottle and pour it all on me. So basically that whole night, that whole day, that whole evening, I sat there with all of them with fruit punch on me. And everybody was looking at her crazy, like, why would you do that? Why would you do that? And she was like, well, because she squirted the fruit punch on me. And I'm just like, well, girl, like, even when I do something that may appear to be stupid as shit, like, it wasn't dumb. It wasn't thought in a tense where I was like, oh, she can't recover from this. When I did this, I was like, okay, she's wet. She just came out the pool. It's not like she's a white woman and her skin's gonna stain. Like, she can easily fix that. And I was just doing that to be funny. Me, on the other hand, I'm sitting there on my light wash clothes, my white shirt, and I'm just sitting there on fruit punch. And I was just like, dang, like, you didn't even have to respond like that. Like, it was literally a pause before she even, you know, responded to what I did initially. Yet nonetheless, I can still be accountable for doing what I did. No matter how logical it appeared to be on my behalf, I can still take accountability for, like, man, you know, you didn't have to do that, but I didn't do it with the intent of being malicious. I literally just did it because I'm like, let's be fun. We don't got any water guns. We don't got any water balloons. Like, y'all just in the pool, just like being whacked, taking pictures, making things look more fun than what it really is. Like, trying to be enticing to the men that we're befriended with. Like, it wasn't even that. Anyways, so that is really the second situation that happened. The second situation was the whole Minute Maid situation where I squirted her with some water while she was still dripping wet in her bikini, and then she responded by spraying me with the whole bottle of fruit punch, and that was that. Oop, my notebook. So the next experience, which is essentially going to be the finale, the conflict, the big climax, is some of the most ghetto shit that I've ever experienced in my life. Like, it was like on some telenovela, like soap opera drama type of like frequency, vibration. I don't even know what to equate it to. It was just really ghetto.com, tm.org. Okay, so getting to the point, we went to the 13th floor. My cross-gender relationship, which was consistent of Leo, Scorpio, Libra, and the men that I mentioned initially, we decided to go to the 13th floor. They were graduating from the Europe program, and initially this was a shared experience that both Leo and I shared because we went to the 13th floor together. Initially, we were supposed to go with a couple of Europe friends or classmates, but that didn't work out quite as planned. So it's just her and I, and that's kind of how we grew close to one another because of our initial experience at this haunted house. So from that experience, I guess we referenced within the group like, oh yeah, like we should all go together. So we ended up going to the 13th floor, and the vibe was off. It was very different. It was very peculiar, but nonetheless, there were a lot of things that happened before this event that didn't make me question the vibe, especially between Leo and a male counterpart in this group. The same male counterpart that I referred to within the April Fool's prank. I noticed there was something different about them. I noticed there was something different about the collective, but I'm just like, I haven't been around them in a minute. Like, we haven't been talking, and when we have, it hasn't been the best of conversations. So I didn't really question it because there was so much questionable about this relationship. And honestly, the reason why I went out with them was because I wanted to have a necessary conversation that needed to be had physically rather than through text, because I try to do that. I try to, have a conversation through text. I was like, how can I be a better friend, because I don't feel like I'm being a good friend. Something that I'm always like doing within my relationships, even within my current relationship, even with my mother, father, brother, I'll always ask them, what can I do to be better? Like, is there something or somewhere within our relationship where I'm not valuing you, where I always like to ask these questions because it's important. So within my relationship, I started to feel like, man, like, I'm not being a good friend because y'all aren't talking to me anymore. And I'm, it wasn't even that I felt like I was the only one being a bad friend, but I could take accountability as I could acknowledge things that I was doing that may have appeared as being, just a bad friend. Because at that time, I was depressed. essentially my year of experience can be equated to nepotism. Say you are highly qualified, you have the degree, the certification, the years of experience, internship, all of that. Yet the company that you want to work for, they look at your resume and they see how, like, you know, what's the word? They see how exceptional you are, how efficient, how, like, persistent you are within the path that you've chosen to, you know, work in within occupationally. Yet they decide to go with their niece or nephew or son or daughter because, you know, that's their son or daughter. That's who they favor more. That is who they want to see succeed more than someone that is highly qualified. So that essentially was like my experience. It was almost like experiencing nepotism. And I was going to say like harsh nepotism, but honestly, nepotism is unfair. So it is harsh, you know. So, well, I'm not going to say it is, you know, but to each its own. But that was like literally my experience with Europe. So it just didn't work out. I had a less than favorable experience in everyone, although I was the most punctual. I always attended all of my classes. I had straight A's, and at that, high A's. Like, I always gave my best. I was always like the best. I was the top performer in that program, the top female performer within that program. And for me not to be able to succeed on externship because my advisors placed me somewhere that I was not supposed to be at, that like no entry level student intern should be at, you know, it just didn't work out. Of course, I take accountability for, you know, things that I could have done to stick it through. But nonetheless, I didn't have control over my occupational placement. Like, everything that was done for me for externship was done by the year of advisors and administrators. So, yeah, nonetheless, I was depressed from that because it was like I was so qualified. I did everything that I was supposed to do. Everything that you asked was done. Yet for the people that didn't give their best, my friends included, you know, they're getting the best positions, the best opportunities. They're getting jobs that are like $18 to $20 an hour. And although I'm proud of them, they did not deserve it because some of them were doing drugs. Some of them did not come in on time. Some of them were not punctual. Some of them never gave their best. Some of them didn't have the best grades. But they're getting, you know, the best positioning and the best compensation. Whereas the department I was placed within, I think they were making like $15 an hour. Like, Europe promised us that we were going to be making more than $16 an hour, if not $16 an hour. And here I'm making, you know, $15 an hour within my department if I were to get converted within it. Although I was presented the opportunity, that just wasn't something that I wanted. But nonetheless, you know, you see the contrast. It's like, how can you be the top performer, but you're placed in a department that is paying you $15 an hour, where you got the lowest performers getting paid possibly $20 an hour, you know, upwardly $20 an hour. So nonetheless, that is what, you know, incited my depression. It was just like, damn, like, what the fuck? Like, it was a confusing time for me. So I'm going through my depression, and for me, when I deal with depression, it's always reclusion, reflection, refining. Although my depression may express itself differently every time that I, you know, experience it, I always revert back to my mechanism, which is reclusion, reflection, refining. In order for me to understand my depression, I have to reclude. I have to take myself away from the environment. I don't like to project. I don't like to really repress my issues. So I have to get away. Not to say that I'm ignoring what's going on, but I have to be with myself to examine, you know, what needs to be critically assessed. Once I do that, I can reflect. I'm like, okay, so what happened prior? What's happening currently? And what do I need to do in the future? That's my reflection. Then refining, I'm just fixing everything. I'm fine-tuning everything. And when you're in a program like Europe, where everything is like all in one, my social life, my academic life, my occupational life was all in one. Everything that I ever really did was with my friends. Like, everything that I was doing at that time in my life was with my friends. And I realized, like, dang, like, I have a lot of stuff that was being neglected in the midst of me pursuing everything that I was pursuing. So I had to get away and really reinvest my time in the areas that were being devalued. So when I was doing that, I didn't explain it because I felt like it was evident. I felt like it was apparent. Like, everybody knew my work. Everybody knew what I was doing. Like, everybody would always reference me as Madam President. Everybody, like, knew how hard I went academically and occupationally. Like, when it comes down to work, I don't play, period. Even with my friends, you know, I don't play. But, like, when it comes down to my goals, I'm definitely a high achiever. I definitely give you that Virgo energy. So, nonetheless, it was just like, dang, like, you should honestly know the vibe. Like, you should know why I'm being distant if I haven't told you. Nonetheless, I do take accountability for not expressing to them, like, hey, I'm depressed, and that's why I'm not talking to you guys, and that's why I'm not as active as I normally would be. Because honestly, within that relationship, as I mentioned previously, I was very nice and I wasn't good to myself, and I started to honor myself more and say no. I've always been like the yes woman within that relationship and within a lot of relationships prior to that former relationship. So I had to learn how to say no. That was the hardest thing for me to do. So they would ask me to do stuff like the Before I Let Go challenge. I don't want to do that. I'm not a social media person in the sense where I get on like social media challenges. Even with me on social media right now, I only talk about things that are relevant to me and what I feel like would be relevant to my audience rather than, relevant topics that are trending. So I'm not really that social media person. So for me to say no, it's like, you should have expected it. You should have expected that. But nonetheless, I share all this to say, like, I was depressed. And during this depression, I stepped away from the friendship. I didn't explain why I stepped away, but, the reasoning was quite evident. Like, there was so much that could have been dissected further to say, like, oh, damn, Lamaya's depressed. Like, even when I think about my current friend group, we had a friend that was going through a little bit of emotional turmoil. And she didn't express into detail what she was going through, but she did tell us that something was wrong upon us asking if something was wrong, which they never did in my former relationship. So once me and my friend asked, we were like, okay, let's go to Burlington, Marshalls, and just pick up a couple of knickknacks for her that we know she's going to like. Went to her house, surprised her, had a moment of quality time, did a bit of gift giving, and we just wanted to assert our love to her and to like affirm that we're here for her, and that brightened up her day. She was honestly going through a mild to moderate depressive state in her life. So like stuff like that is what I do for my friends, but wasn't done for me. Nonetheless, like I said, I was depressed. I don't know how many times to say it, but I was depressed. And they just did not support me. There was no empathy. There was no sympathy. It was just like, fuck you, bitch. Like, why aren't you here for us? What about us? What about me? Not you. Like, no one ever asked me what was wrong with me. But here I am in the midst of my depression asking you guys, how can I be a better friend? Here I am asking you guys how your day's going. Here I am sending you guys motivational quotes in the same way that I did from the beginning. Within our externship. That's what I did initially before I even before I even quit my externship. Like, I would always be like, you guys got it, girls, like da 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 da. None of that was reciprocated, and that's cool. That's my L to take, because it's like, that's what I allowed. You know what I mean? I take accountability for everything that I allowed, but for how they responded, that's the only thing that I wanted them to be accountable for. Especially Leo, because me and her were much more closer than Scorpio or Libra. Like, her and I were like really close. Whenever she needed me, whenever she was going through something, anybody in that group, she knew she could call me because she was going to get some sound advice. But nonetheless, we were at Steak and Shake, and I'm telling you guys, the most ghetto shit I've ever experienced in my life. I'm explaining literally what I explained to you guys. And Leo's just like, well, no, I just feel like you could have done better. I feel like you could have did this, because honestly, I really don't take accountability for what you're saying, because it's you. All the other girls on the table, they're like, okay, like okay, yeah, I get it. That's my bad. That's my fault. Cool. But Leo was just like, nah, like, it's not me. Like, it's whatever. And it wasn't like I was trying to push my emotions on her. It was more so the way that she responded. You know what I mean? I took accountability for not being as transparent as I should have been while going through my, moment of depression, having that little episode, I guess you can say. But, it was just like, it just wasn't reciprocated on her behalf. But then it gets crazier than that. Then, we're sitting at the table, and I'm like, okay, cool. Nobody's going to be receptive. She tells me that she done effed homeboy in our social group. And not only did she F him, she took the boy's virginity. And just act like it was like a regular one night stand. She was like, I got drunk, da 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 da. I'm like, whatever. Like, but it was just so weird, because it's just like, for me, on a moral level, like I said, I really did not like this young man. But I think it really bothered me, because it was just like, just imagine if I did like him, and then you go around sleeping with him, and not only sleeping with him, taking his virginity, and then gonna act like it was just like nothing, like it's just a one night stand, and then at that, you're also in a relationship with your ham ass nigga, and you like sleeping with other niggas that are supposed to be your friends. But the thing that was so crazy was like I saw it happening, and what was so crazy to me too was like all of our friends are just acting like it's normal, like yeah, she just kind of fucked him, it's like nothing crazy. I'm like, bitch, that's crazy. Friends don't fuck each other. No. And that's what like that, like all of that calamity just made me like assess like this shit is like not for me. This shit is not for me. I would never do that. Like just my mentality of it is just like I said, I did not like him, but it's just like, what if I did? What if I did like him and you slept with him? And not only you slept with him, you took his virginity and then had the audacity to come back to me and tell me about it. And you still had a boyfriend at the time. But I did understand, possible reasonings for, her actions and her behaviors, because like I said, she was with a ham ass nigga. Like he did not want the same things that she wanted, and she was going through a lot of stress at that time, a lot of issues that I will not disclose because they're personal, but she was going through a lot, so I could understand the emotional distress that she was within, to where she was vulnerable enough to sleep with him. But I think what was so crazy, it was like we literally would discuss how, like, I wouldn't say insignificant or minuscule these men were, but we would discuss like how juvenile they were and how immature they were. And for me, I literally sat my maturity in the midst of immaturity, because I'm, friends with these individuals that I perceive as being mature. And I do feel like they have maturity within certain aspects of life. But as I was later revealed, they may lack emotional intelligence, which is to a degree a level of maturity. They may lack wisdom, which is, an aspect of maturity. So there were certain things in areas where they were not as mature as myself. And the same, vice versa for myself. There were certain areas where they were more mature at where I wasn't, having that aspect of the hustle. Like I never been in a position where I was in jeopardy of losing my house, or where I was in jeopardy of, not being able to pay a car note. Like I never had that experience. So, there were certain areas where they were more mature at than myself, but nonetheless, I ended up realizing like, okay, that's why you guys vibe with the immaturity of these men. Even though you can contradict yourself and discuss certain contrasts between yourself and these men, you still are attached to them or attracted to them in some way, shape, or form. So nonetheless, I found it to be interesting, because it's like we would literally talk about these men and just how juvenile they were, and also discuss like how if they had the chance to plot on some of us, how they would plot on some of us. You know what I mean? Like we were just very aware of certain dynamics within this relationships, or certain aspects within this dynamic that was just like, okay, be wary, be careful, or correct it. For me, I was never positioned in a way where I had to correct it, because I always presented myself correctly. Like, you knew you could not fuck me, but with Leo, she wanted to give off the impression like, you can fuck me, but you're really not. You know what I mean? Like, she liked to play that hard to get, and for me, it was just like, if you're not gonna get me, you're not gonna, like, if you haven't got me, you're not gonna get me. That's just the type of person I am. I'm not gonna play those games. If I like you, you're gonna know I like you. If I don't, I don't. I'm not going to give you the impression that I do, or that you have a chance. But, nonetheless, it was just like, we knew what was going on. So I thought it was just strange, because it's like, they were literally plotting on you. And you think after you had, did your thing with homeboy, he wasn't going to tell his cousins and his friend, and they weren't going to be talking about it. Like, that whole relationship literally crumbled after that whole night at Steak and Shake. It may have not crumbled, initially upon that conversation and everything that happened, but it definitely is no longer what it is, from what I see socially, or what I saw socially. It's not what it was. Side note, if you've seen my beta male video, a lot of what I was discussing was pertaining to this cross-gender relationship, and there was a point in our relationship where we played truth or dare. So, nonetheless, they were asking ridiculous demands of Leo, especially. They were trying to get me out of my comfort to see what I would do, but no. I can't remember what one of the friends asked, but he literally wanted me and Leo to like practically grind on each other. And it was just like, wow, like, do you think she's a porn star? Do you think she's a prostitute? Do you think, like, what are you doing? Because no matter what, like, I'm always embracive of women embracing their sensuality and their sexuality. I'll never shame you for being sexually liberated and or expressive, you know what I mean? But I think in the way that she yielded her expression and leveraged, like, her femininity, it was like, you got to be careful, because the perception that you are creating may not be the most favoring to your actual character, because in that relationship, a lot of the men really viewed her as like a sexual object. They didn't really view her highly as a woman or a person in the way that they did myself. And I don't do this comparison to be like, yeah, like, they valued me, bitch, they thought I was a classy ass one. Like, no, I don't say that in that way. I'm just really being object with it. Like, they really viewed her as a sexual object, and maybe to a degree they could have viewed me in such a way, but they knew, like, you was not gonna get what you got from Leo out of me. You're not gonna get that. I'm not gonna give you that. You know what I mean? So they never really tried with me, but they would always try with Leo. They would always, you know what I mean? And I think she really liked the attention. And maybe that has to do with her Leo sun, or, you know, what have you. But she liked that attention. She liked the desire. But, you know, I share this story because it's just like, all of this, and I could have avoided it. I could have avoided it if I was obedient to myself, and moreover, if I was obedient to God. It got louder and louder and louder and louder until I actually was like, dang, God, okay, I hear you. I'm listening. This is ghetto. I'm sorry. You're right. Oh, shit is ghetto as fuck. Wow. You know what I mean? Like, got louder and louder until I listened. So I wanted to share this story because it's like, it's going to get louder until you listen. If you're not listening to yourself, if you're not listening to the Lord, if you're not listening to the Spirit, whatever you listen to, you know, if you're not listening, bitch, it's going to get louder and louder and louder until you listen. So just be obedient. Don't be disobedient to yourself. It's just not worth it. It's not worth it. Don't be in relationships where you have to compensate. Don't be in relationships where you have to question your value. Literally, I share this story time because the relationship that I'm in right now is almost equivalent to when women have experienced devastation within their first relationship. Like, they got their heart broken by their first love or their biggest crush. That is like the equivalency to my experience. That former relationship really broke me down, at which I had to build myself up to be prepared for the current relationship that I'm a part of. These women, phenomenal women, like, it's just everything that I could pray for, imagine. Like, I'm so blessed to have these women within my life. They value my time with my family. They value my personal time as I do theirs. We're always motivating each other. We're always complimenting each other. There has never been a moment within our relationship where we experienced a conflict and we haven't been able to resolve it. And at that, we rarely experience conflict. It's always just like corrective reinforcement if we do experience a conflict. But it's never like to the degree at which I experienced in my former relationship. Like, I thank God for this relationship, and I'm so thankful of myself for just being as in tune as I need to be within this relationship to maintain it, because I'm so blessed. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I feel like I see a lot of posts on Facebook where people are like, I'm overdue for a good friend or a raw ass friend or da 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 da. Trust me, when you fix yourself and you do the work that you need to do, heal from whatever you need to heal from, it'll come. Because this relationship literally dropped into my lap. I wasn't even expecting it. Like, I have so much respect for these women. I love them and wouldn't trade them in the world. You know what I mean? Because our relationship started at the end of my former relationship. And it's just a beautiful relationship. So healthy. I feel like one thing that I respect about this relationship as well is, like, I can discuss spirituality and or religion, because there's so much that's so different about each other. Like one of my friends, Jehovah's Witness, the other one and myself, we're a bit more spiritual. We don't really hold ourselves to a religious bounding, but we do appreciate religion. One of them are vegan. I'm polo-pescatarian. The other one is polo-pescatarian as well. It's just like the duality of this relationship, and just blessed and highly favored. Okay? So hopefully you enjoyed this little story time. My throat is getting a little dry because I need some water. But hopefully you enjoyed this.